Angela Monroe stepped through the double-glass doors of Brightwood Memorial Hospital, her head held high. Her white uniform was crisp, her shoes polished to a shine, and her stethoscope hung proudly around her neck. This was supposed to be the start of a new chapter in her career, one she had worked tirelessly for, but the instant silence that fell over the reception area told her everything she needed to know. Conversations halted, heads turned, and then the whispers began. "Why would they hire someone like her?" a voice murmured from a corner. "A black woman in this hospital? Doesn't she know she doesn't belong here?" "I heard she's supposed to be on the surgical team," another voice chimed in, dripping with incredulity. "Can you imagine? Who would trust her with their life?" Angela forced a smile and approached the front desk, where a woman with frosted blonde hair and a name tag that read Margaret greeted her with a practiced, frosty smile. "Can I help you?" Margaret's eyes darted to Angela's badge, her lips pursing slightly. "Good morning," Angela said, her tone bright but professional. "I'm Angela Monroe, the new nurse on the surgical team. Could you direct me to the head nurse's office?" Margaret blinked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before she gestured down the hall. "Third door on the left." Her voice was polite but cool enough to chill the air. Angela nodded her thanks and made her way down the hallway, acutely aware of the stairs following her. She squared her shoulders. She had faced this before. Being a black woman in a predominantly white space was never easy, but she'd learned to steel herself against the subtle slights, the pointed looks, and the unspoken questions. But she also knew this wasn't just about her. She was here to prove that she belonged. She didn't just belong, she thrived. The head nurse, Linda Davenport, was a stout, no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s, with a perpetual scowl that seemed permanently etched into her face. She barely glanced at Angela when she entered her office. "You're late," Linda snapped, though Angela had arrived 10 minutes early. Angela opened her mouth to respond, but decided against it. "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding, ma'am," she said instead. Linda finally looked up, her gaze sweeping over Angela in a way that made her feel like she was being weighed and found wanting. "Well, we'll see if you can keep up. We run a tight ship here, and I don't have time for coddling. You'll be shadowing Nurse Clark today." Angela nodded, refusing to let the cold reception rattle her. "Understood." Linda dismissed her with a curt wave, and Angela exited the office. Outside, she met Nurse Clark, a lanky man with sandy hair and a permanent smirk. His eyes raked over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "So you're the new hire," he drawled. "Didn't expect they'd hire someone like you. Hope you can handle the pace here." Angela's jaw tightened, but she forced a neutral expression. "I've worked in high-pressure environments before. I'm ready for whatever's required." Clark's smirk widened. "We'll see about that." Angela's first day was a whirlwind of chaos and hostility. Nurse Clark seemed determined to push her to her limits, assigning her to the most demanding patients while he took the easier cases. Her every move was scrutinized, every minor misstep magnified. By mid-afternoon, Angela was sent to deal with Mr. Billings, a notoriously difficult patient known for his outbursts. The moment she entered his room, his face twisted into a sneer. "What's this? They've got a colored girl taking care of me now?" he spat. Angela's stomach tightened, but she remained professional. "Good afternoon, Mr. Billings. I'm here to check your vitals and ensure your pain management is on track." "Don't want you touching me," he growled, crossing his arms. "Where's my real nurse?" Angela's hands trembled slightly as she set down her clipboard, but she refused to back down. "I'm fully qualified to provide your care, Mr. Billings," she said firmly. "If you'd prefer, I can have the head nurse speak with you about your concerns." He grumbled, but eventually allowed her to proceed. As she worked, his muttering continued, but Angela focused on her task, determined not to let his bigotry undermine her professionalism. That evening, Angela overheard a group of nurses talking in the break room. "Did you see Monroe with Mr. Billings?" One of them snickered. "I bet he gave her hell." "Serves her right for thinking she can just waltz in here," another said. "This isn't some charity case." "I'll give her a week before she cracks under the pressure," one nurse added. "I'm betting the VIP patients won't even let her near them. A black woman like her, she's dead in the water." Angela froze in the doorway, her heart pounding. She considered walking away but decided against it. Instead, she stepped into the room, her presence silencing the group. "Is there something you'd like to discuss with me directly?" she asked, her voice steady. The nurses exchanged awkward glances, but none of them spoke up. After a long, tense silence, Angela turned and left. The sting of their words lingered, but so did her resolve. The next morning, Angela's day started with an icy reception at the nurses' station. Her colleagues barely acknowledged her presence as she reviewed her assignments for the day. Among her list of patients was a new addition, another VIP. "She's on Shaw's case?" one nurse whispered to another, loud enough for Angela to hear. "I can't believe they let her near him. What if something goes wrong? You know they'll blame us for it." "Blame us?" the other nurse scoffed. "They'll sweep it under the rug for diversity's sake. But I'm telling you, if Shaw finds out who's taking care of him, he'll demand someone else." Angela's hand tightened around her clipboard. She turned to face them, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "If you have concerns about my work, feel free to discuss them with me directly." The nurses exchanged glances, but neither responded. Angela walked away, her resolve firm but her patience wearing thin later that day. Angela was called to assist with the VIP patient in the ICU. The man, Gregory Shaw, was a middle-aged executive recovering from a serious surgery. Unlike many of her other patients, Shaw greeted Angela with warmth and respect. "Good morning, Nurse Monroe," he said with a smile. "I appreciate your help. It's been a rough few days." Angela's professional demeanor didn't waver, but inside she felt a flicker of relief. Over the next few days, as she tended to Shaw, he began asking her questions about her work and her experiences at Brightwood. Angela hesitated at first, but eventually opened up about the challenges she faced. Shaw listened intently, his expression growing serious. "That's unacceptable," he said finally. "A hospital should be a place of healing, not hostility." Angela nodded, grateful for his understanding, but unsure what, if anything, he could do to help. Little did she know, Gregory Shaw wasn't just any patient, and his presence at Brightwood would soon turn the entire hospital on its head. Word spread quickly through Brightwood Memorial Hospital that Gregory Shaw, the VIP patient, had taken a particular liking to Angela Monroe. Her colleagues noticed his repeated requests for her, and the whispers began again, this time with sharper edges. "She must be playing him," one nurse sneered in the break room. "Why else would he keep asking for her? People like her know how to manipulate their way up. Or maybe he just feels sorry for her," another replied. "Let's see how long it lasts." Angela walked in just as the laughter subsided. The nurses shot her condescending smiles before returning to their coffee. She clenched her jaw but refused to let their words break her composure. That afternoon, as Angela prepared Shaw's medication, she found herself called into the head nurse's office. Linda Davenport sat behind her desk, her face stern as always. "Nurse Monroe," Linda began, "I've been hearing concerns about your professionalism." Angela's stomach dropped. "Concerns?" she repeated, her voice calm but firm. "Specifically regarding your favoritism toward Mr. Shaw?" Linda continued, her eyes narrowing. "It's important that we maintain a professional distance from all patients, regardless of their status." Angela straightened her back. "With all due respect, Mrs. Davenport, my care for Mr. Shaw has been entirely professional. He requests me because he appreciates my work. If there's any specific instance of misconduct, I'd be happy to address it." Linda's lips thinned. "Just watch yourself, Nurse Monroe." Angela left the office with her head held high, but the encounter left her rattled. It was clear the scrutiny wasn't going away anytime soon. Gregory Shaw's recovery progressed rapidly, and soon he was able to move around with assistance. One afternoon, he asked Angela to wheel him to the hospital garden. As they strolled through the paths lined with blooming flowers, Shaw turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Nurse Monroe, I want you to be honest with me," he said. "How much of what you've faced here is because of your skill, and how much is because of who you are?" Angela hesitated. "I'd like to think my skills speak for themselves, Mr. Shaw, but there are challenges that come with being a black woman in this field. Challenges that have nothing to do with my abilities." Shaw nodded slowly, his gaze distant. I thought as much. He looked at her, his eyes sharp. You deserve better, Angela. People like you are the future of healthcare, not relics of an outdated system. Angela felt a lump in her throat. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. That means a lot. What Angela didn't know was that Gregory Shaw had already begun making calls. As CEO of a major healthcare conglomerate, his influence extended far beyond the walls of Brightwood, and he had no intention of leaving things as they were. The day Gregory Shaw was discharged, the hospital buzzed with activity. Angela accompanied him to the lobby, where a black car waited to take him home. As he prepared to leave, Shaw turned to her one last time. Angela, I want you to remember this, he said. Change doesn't come easy, but it starts with people like you. Don't let them push you out. I'll be in touch. Angela watched the car pull away, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. She returned to the ICU where the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Her colleagues' gazes were no longer just dismissive. Some now held resentment, others curiosity. By the end of the week, the first sign of Shaw's influence became clear. An email from hospital administration announced an independent review of Brightwood's workplace culture, specifically addressing concerns about diversity and inclusion. Anonymous reporting lines were set up, and mandatory training sessions were scheduled. This is Shaw's doing, one nurse hissed in the hallway. He's trying to turn this place upside down. Good, Angela thought, but kept her expression neutral. Resistance to the changes grew quickly. Staff members openly complained about the review process, and some even blamed Angela for the upheaval. She's playing the victim card, one doctor muttered in the lounge. Shaw's just her pawn. Angela's workload doubled as she continued to provide excellent care while enduring the mounting hostility. Even so, she refused to falter. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Don't let them see you falter. One evening, as Angela left the hospital, she found a note tucked under her car's windshield wiper. It read, "You don't belong here. Quit while you can." Angela's hands trembled as she held the note, but anger quickly replaced fear. She took a photo of it and reported the incident to the new anonymous hotline, determined to fight back. The next morning, Angela walked into Brightwood with a renewed sense of determination. Despite the mounting hostility, she reminded herself that change always faced resistance. As she made her way to the nurse's station, her colleagues fell silent, their eyes darting away as she passed. The tension in the air was palpable. Halfway through her shift, Angela was called into Linda Davenport's office again. The head nurse's expression was colder than usual. Nurse Monroe, Linda began, folding her hands on the desk. It seems your presence here is causing disruption. I've had multiple complaints from staff about your behavior. Angela's stomach churned. Complaints? She asked. Could you be specific? They say you've been divisive, Linda continued, her tone sharp. Your interactions with Mr. Shaw and the subsequent review process have created unnecessary tension. Perhaps it's best if we reevaluate your fit here. Angela's heart pounded, but she met Linda's gaze evenly. With all due respect, Mrs. Davenport, I have done nothing but my job. If there are specific concerns, I am more than willing to address them, but I will not accept vague accusations to justify sidelining me. Linda's lips thinned, but she didn't respond. Angela stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. Finally, Linda waved her hand dismissively. You may go. Angela left the office, her resolve stronger than ever. If they wanted to push her out, they'd have to try harder than that. That evening, Angela received a call from an unfamiliar number. Hesitant, she answered, and Gregory Shaw's familiar voice greeted her. Angela, I hope I'm not calling too late, he began. Not at all, Mr. Shaw, Angela replied. How can I help you? Actually, it's how I can help you, Shaw said. I've been following the developments at Brightwood, and I want you to know I'm not done advocating for change, but I need you to stay strong. You've already inspired more people than you realize. Angela felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. That means a lot. I've also connected with some members of the hospital board, Shaw continued. There are people in your corner, Angela. Don't give up. For the first time in days, Angela felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you. I won't. The next day, Angela noticed subtle shifts in the hospital's atmosphere. A few colleagues began to treat her with cautious respect, while others avoided her altogether. More importantly, she received a message from the hospital administrator requesting a meeting. In the administrator's office, Angela sat across from Dr. Harris, the hospital's director. His demeanor was measured but guarded. "Nurse Monroe," he began, "I'll get straight to the point. The review process initiated by Mr. Shaw has highlighted serious issues within our institution. Your name has come up repeatedly in these discussions, both positively and negatively." Angela nodded, bracing herself. "I've done my best to perform my duties and address these challenges with professionalism, Dr. Harris." "That's evident," Harris said, "but we're at a crossroads. Change is coming, and it will be met with resistance. I need to know if you're prepared to continue being at the center of it." Angela met his gaze. "I am." Harris studied her for a moment before nodding. "Good, because we'll need strong voices like yours to ensure this change takes hold." Angela left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. The battle was far from over, but for the first time she felt the tides turning in her favor. The results of the independent review were announced in a staff-wide meeting. The findings were damning: systemic biases, a lack of diversity in leadership, and a toxic culture that marginalized voices like Angela's. Dr. Harris addressed the staff with a tone of stern resolve. "These findings are unacceptable. Effective immediately, we will be implementing mandatory diversity training, establishing a task force to oversee inclusivity efforts, and holding leadership accountable for fostering a respectful workplace." The room buzzed with murmurs. Some staff members exchanged nervous glances, while others looked relieved. Angela sat near the back, her heart pounding with a mix of vindication and anticipation. After the meeting, Linda Davenport resigned, citing personal reasons. Angela suspected otherwise but kept her thoughts to herself. With the changes underway, Angela found herself stepping into a new role in the Task Force for Inclusivity. Gregory Shaw's continued support bolstered her confidence, and the hospital began to feel less like a battleground and more like a place of hope. One afternoon, as Angela walked through the halls, she overheard a younger nurse speaking to a colleague. "I joined because of her," the nurse said, nodding toward Angela. "She showed me that we can make a difference." Angela smiled softly, her resolve stronger than ever. The fight wasn't over, but together they were building a brighter future, one step at a time. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please support me by clicking the logo in the bottom right corner to subscribe to my channel. This way you won't miss any of the exciting stories coming up. Thank you so much.